I never suspected my best friend. That's the part one keep coming back to. Not because I thought I knew everything about him. I just never imagined there was something he had been hiding that could change the way I looked at the people around him. Especially her. Her name was Mara, 46, and she had been part of my best friend's life for years. I knew her as the woman who could walk into our little auto repair shop carrying 2 coffees and somehow make a room full of exhausted men quiet down without asking. That afternoon, rain tapped against the garage windows while I struggled with a stubborn bolt beneath an old sedan. "You're fighting it," Mara said. I looked up. She stood beside the workbench, holding a paper cup toward me. "I've been fighting it for 20 minutes. That explains why it isn't impressed." I laughed despite myself. She smiled, then looked away. It was nothing. Just a joke. A normal moment. But when I took the coffee, our fingers touched for half a second. She pulled her hand back first. Neither of us said anything. I suddenly became very interested in the engine in front of me. Mara had always carried herself with a quiet confidence. Not the kind that demanded attention. The kind that made you notice when she left the room. "Your friend called earlier," she said. "Yeah?" She hesitated. "Never mind." I looked at her. For a second, she looked like she was about to tell me something important. Then she smiled again. "Coffee's getting cold." After she left, I found myself staring at the doorway longer than I should have. I didn't know what was in those messages yet. I didn't know why her voice had changed when she mentioned my best friend. I only knew that, for some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at me before looking away. 3 days later, Mara came back to the shop with a problem she could have easily taken somewhere else. Her car wouldn't start. I found her standing beside it in the parking lot, arms folded against the cold, staring at the open hood like it had personally offended her. "You know," I said, walking over, "most people call before they bring a dead car here." She gave me a tired smile. "I almost did." "Almost?" "I didn't want to bother you." Something about the way she said it made me stop joking. "You're not bothering me." She looked at me for a second, then lowered her eyes. "Okay." That was all. While I worked, she sat on the edge of the waiting room chair, scrolling through her phone without really reading anything. Every few minutes, the screen went dark, and she would stare at it anyway. Her hands caught my attention. There was a faint red mark around one finger, like she had been twisting a ring that wasn't there anymore. "You okay?" I asked. She looked up too quickly. "Fine." I nodded. She smiled. Neither of us believed her. The battery was almost finished, but I needed a replacement part. I told her it would take an hour. "You can go home." "I know." She stayed. That surprised me more than it should have. Later, I heard her laugh at something on her phone. It was quiet and brief, nothing like her usual laugh. When I looked over, she had already put the phone away. "You're staring," she said. I wasn't. You were. I smiled. She did too. Then her expression changed. For a moment, she looked exhausted. Not physically tired. Just worn down from carrying something she didn't know how to put into words. I wish people were as honest as they pretend to be, she said. I didn't know what to say. So I didn't say anything. She looked at me. The silence lasted a little too long. Then her phone buzzed on the chair between us. Neither of us reached for it. The shop was almost empty when the rain started getting serious. Mara had stayed late because her car still wasn't ready, and I was finishing the last few things before closing. She sat at the counter with a cup of vending machine coffee, reading something on her phone. You can go, I told her. I know. You keep saying that. She looked up. And you keep asking. That made me smile. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and immediately stopped smiling. Who is it? She turned the phone face down. Someone I don't want to talk to. I didn't ask again. For a while, we listened to rain hitting the metal roof. Then she said, Your friend knows. I stopped wiping the counter. Knows what? She rubbed her thumb against the edge of her phone. That I don't answer his calls anymore. I waited. She looked at me, almost amused. You really don't ask many questions, do you? I figured you'd tell me if you wanted me to know. Her expression softened. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. She laughed quietly, then looked down. You keep saying that. She looked up. And you keep asking. That made me smile. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and immediately stopped smiling. Who is it? She turned the phone face down. Someone I don't want to talk to. I didn't ask again. For a while, we listened to rain hitting the metal roof. Then she said, Your friend knows. I stopped wiping the counter. Knows what? She rubbed her thumb against the edge of her phone. That I don't answer his calls anymore. I waited. She looked at me, almost amused. You really don't ask many questions, do you? I figured you'd tell me if you wanted me to know. Her expression softened. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. She laughed quietly, then looked down. I noticed her hand trembling. You okay? She nodded. Then, after a pause, she whispered, No. It was the first honest answer she'd given me. I moved around the counter and stood beside her. Not touching. Just close enough to notice how tired she looked. I shouldn't be telling you this. Then don't. Then don't. She looked at me. That's the problem. Her voice was barely above the rain. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Her hand rested on the counter between us. I almost reached for it. Then headlights swept across the windows. Mara pulled her hand back. A car had stopped outside. She stared through the glass. Then her phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't turn it over. She just looked at me and whispered, Please don't ask me who that is. The car outside belonged to my best friend. I knew it before he stepped out. Mara saw my face and closed her eyes for a second. Don't, she whispered. Don't what? Make this worse. He walked into the shop carrying an umbrella, smiling like nothing was wrong. You two still here? I looked at Mara. She looked at the floor. Something had changed. Not because of what had happened, but because we both knew we couldn't pretend it hadn't. My friend talked about the rain, the traffic, some problem at work. I barely heard him. Mara answered when necessary. Her voice sounded normal. That somehow made it worse. When he finally left to take a phone call outside, I turned toward her. What are we doing? She froze. I don't know. You keep coming here. I know. You keep telling me things you don't tell him. I know. And then you look at me like. I stopped. She swallowed. Like what? I couldn't say it. She waited. The shop suddenly felt too small. You should go home, she said. Probably. Neither of us moved. Her eyes stayed on mine. There was no smile this time. No teasing. No easy excuse. Just two people standing too close to something neither of us had named. I don't want you to think badly of me, she said. I don't. You should. Why? She looked away. Because I'm not handling this well. I didn't know whether she meant her problems, my friendship with him, or whatever had started happening between us. Maybe she didn't know either. She reached for her coat. Her fingers shook as she tried to fasten the button. I wanted to help. I didn't. She noticed. That tiny hesitation seemed to hurt her more than anything I'd said. At the door, she stopped. Without turning around, she whispered. The worst part is that I was lonely long before you noticed me. I didn't see Mara for 6 days. I told myself that was probably good. Then, on the 7th morning, she appeared at the shop carrying a small cardboard box. I need you to keep this. I stared at it. What's in there? Things I should have thrown away years ago. She placed it on the workbench. Inside was an old photograph, a folded letter, and a phone with a crack screen. I looked at her. Why are you giving me this? Because you deserve to know why I've been acting strange. She picked up the photograph. A younger version of Mara stood beside a man I'd never seen before. He was my husband, she said. I hadn't known she had been married. He died 11 years ago. My throat tightened. She rubbed her thumb over the edge of the photograph. After that, I got very good at being fine. I didn't interrupt. She showed me the letter. I wrote this the night before he died. I never gave it to him. Her voice cracked on the last word. I looked away, giving her the privacy she needed. Then she said something that made me look back. You remind me of him. I didn't know what to do with that. Is that why? No. She answered too quickly. Then she took a breath. Not in the way you're thinking. She folded the letter again. You don't remind me of how he looked. You remind me of how I felt before I stopped letting myself need people. The shop went quiet. I could hear the old refrigerator humming in the corner. I don't want to become someone you have to take care of, she said. I never thought that. I know. She looked at me for a long moment. Then her phone buzzed. A message from my best friend appeared on the crack screen. You need to tell him the truth, asterisk asterisk. Mara stared at it. So did I. What truth? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly placed the phone in my hand. Her fingers stayed against mine for one brief second. Then she whispered. Everything he thinks happened between us is wrong. The truth wasn't as dramatic as I'd imagined. My best friend had seen the messages. He had misunderstood them. So had I. Mara had been helping him through something he was too ashamed to tell me about. The messages I'd seen weren't secret meetings or confessions. They were about me. He'd noticed the way I looked at her. He'd noticed the way she looked away. And instead of asking either of us, he'd let the silence grow. I thought I was protecting you, he admitted later. Mara shook her head. You were protecting yourself. He didn't argue. Neither did I. After he left, Mara and I sat outside the shop on two overturned crates. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement dark and shining beneath the streetlights. So, I said. So? You're not disappearing again? She looked at me. I thought about it. Why didn't you? Her fingers moved across the edge of her sleeve. Because I'm tired of running from things just because they're difficult. I nodded. Neither of us said anything for a while. There was no sudden confession. No promise that everything would be easy. Just the strange relief of not having to pretend anymore. She leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. I don't know what this becomes. Neither do I. That's okay? I think so. She opened her eyes. Then, almost cautiously, she placed her hand beside mine on the crate. Our fingers touched. Neither of us moved away. After a few seconds, she turned her palm upward. I took her hand. It was such a small thing. But after weeks of hesitation, it felt like the first honest answer we'd given each other. She rested her head lightly against my shoulder. I stayed still. For once, neither of us needed to explain anything. The shop behind us was dark. The street was nearly empty. And sitting there beside her, I realized I wasn't waiting for some perfect moment anymore. I was already in it. I still have the messages. Not because I reread them. I don't. I keep them because sometimes a life can turn on something as small as a few lines glowing on a phone screen. Back then, I thought discovering the truth would explain everything. It didn't. It just showed me how many things I'd misunderstood. Mara and I didn't suddenly become different people. She still goes quiet when something worries her. I still talk too much when I'm nervous. Sometimes we'll sit across from each other and realize neither of us knows what to say. But now, the silence doesn't feel like something we have to escape. That's what changed. She stopped pretending she was fine when she wasn't. I stopped assuming I had to understand everything before I could stay. And my best friend? We're okay. It took time. There were uncomfortable conversations, apologies that didn't fix everything immediately, and a few weeks where none of us knew what normal was supposed to look like. Eventually, we stopped trying to make it normal. We made it honest instead. Mara once told me that losing someone had taught her to be careful with the people she let close. I told her being careful wasn't the same as being alone. She smiled at that. Then she reached across the table and took my hand. No dramatic promise followed. No perfect ending. Just warmth. Just her thumb moving slowly across my knuckles while we sat there talking about absolutely nothing. I used to think love arrived loudly. Now I think sometimes it arrives quietly, after you've spent weeks misunderstanding it. Sometimes it looks like staying. Sometimes it looks like finally telling the truth. And sometimes, it starts with a message you were never supposed to read. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?